2025 has been an incredible shit show for us as fans. Let's have a little look what he has to say.
Alright, so I'm gonna just come right out and say it. Thus far, 2025 has been the single worst year in UFC history. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe that's not fair of me to say because it's not like I've been watching the sport since the very beginning, but I will stand.
I have, though. I watched almost every single UFC since UFC 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's a little gap with like 30 or 40 UFCs I haven't watched, but I think I watched from 1 to 150, and maybe it was a little, or like 130 or something. It was a little part between there. Where I wasn't watching, but me and my brother back in the day bought DVDs of like not VHSs or DVDs or whatever, I don't remember which one it was, of all the UFC. So we watched every single one from 1 to like 100, and then we had some lacking ones, and then we had a few in between. And yeah, it's probably one of the worst years ever.
And by this, when I say that since I started watching in 2008, this really has to be the worst year for the UFC that I've ever seen.
Yep, 100%.
In terms of fan experience, this year has been really disappointing on almost every conceivable level, and I know that I'm not the only one who feels this way based on what I've seen people saying online. From the matchmaking to the ESPN deal, which I've grown to despise, to Dana White basically becoming a part-time CEO.
To the Reebok deal, the one that fucked all the fighters over. And the fact that all these fighters are actually just contracted, self-employed people that can't work anywhere else. So you're actually an employee, but they have said you're self-employed. So there's a whole hullabaloo there. There's a reason why the UFC can do what they want.
Everything about the UFC this year has screamed dysfunction, greed, and laziness. And hey, you know, some of the things that happened this year isn't necessarily Dana or the UFC's fault, like Arman Sarukian and Macy Barber pulling out of their fights one day in advance. It definitely hurt the card.
Who the fuck is this? Who the fuck is that? To quote Conor McGregor, who the fuck is that? Oh, I've never seen her in my life. I'm not gonna lie, most women, female fights, I skip them unless they're like Lee, the Zhang Wei Li or some of the fun girls, but I've never seen this girl before.
Cards and gives us less fights to hopefully enjoy, but even outside of the uncontrollable circumstances, there is still a ton of stuff that the UFC is letting fall by the wayside. And the crazy part is that nobody inside the company seems to care. If anything, they have doubled down on the dysfunction and are actively trying to gaslight us into believing that this is still the golden era. And yeah, in this video, I'm going to be talking about all this and more.
You know, I'm actually quite happy that people are talking about this now, because when Dana White used to be on the podium, he used to be fucking, let's go, this one, I want to see this fight, so I'm going to make this fight happen. He was very passionate, and that passion, I think, really jumped over to the fans. If you ever seen the press conference with Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo, oh my God, they went all over the world. It was wild. He was up there. Everybody was there. He was bam, 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 bam. Let's go. Now he kind of seems to be doing power slap. And
let's start off with what, in my opinion, is the most obvious issue, which is the matchmaking. And
yeah,
if there was one fight that encapsulated the UFC's complete and utter creative bankruptcy this year, it's Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez 2. What kind of blackmail photos does Yair's manager have on Dana to convince him that this was a good idea? Volk absolutely dismantled Yair the first time that they fought, and I know that everyone in the world has already said this next part, but it's 100% true. The fact that the UFC gave the title shot to Yair over Movsar Evloev is absolutely criminal. And I can say that the UFC is desperate for a younger Mexican champion, or I can say that Dana is only thinking of the bottom line here, but what I will say is that this is a pathetic display of favoritism from the matchmakers. Sure.
I think the issue is more laziness, more so than I think he wants a young Mexican champion. Maybe he wants one too, but it's almost like, oh yeah, they just fought. Let's just fucking put them together again and put them on the main card. That's how I feel this. It's like when you're tired and you've come home and you don't want to make any food, so you just shove everything you had from yesterday into a little bit of a casserole. That's what it feels like.
Movsar is less exciting to watch than Rodriguez is, but the issue here is that there is no way that anyone with more than 2 brain cells can justify snubbing Movsar for Rodriguez. Speaking of terrible title fights, how about...
You can also say that about people like Tony Ferguson back in the day. Like, there's a lot of people that's gone on long winning streaks and not gotten anything because either circumstance or the UFC didn't want them there.
The one that's happening this weekend. Now that I think about it, this one might be just as bad as Volk versus Yair 2. And I understand that Merab asked for the rematch with Sean, mainly for the fact that it for sure makes him the most money through pay-per-view points, but it's still a dumb matchup. Also, if you look at the UFC and ESPN MMA's YouTube channels, it is very clear who they want to see win this fight, especially for ESPN MMA. If you go to their their YouTube Shorts section, it is an endless sea of Sean O'Malley glaze. That shit.
Okay, let's go through it. Sean O'Malley, Merab. Sean O'Malley, O'Malley, Aspinall, O'Malley, Merab, Pereira.
It seriously looks like a Sean O'Malley fan page. And look, I like Sean. I know that that's blasphemy for most of you, but I think that he's a really fun fighter to watch. But much like in the case of Yair Rodriguez, the UFC is blatantly trying to get someone who they favor to hold the title with Sean O'Malley. And I already made a whole video about how the UFC butchered Jose Aldo's final run with his last professional fight ever.
Oh man, that is so it sucks. And I like, listen, I really like Ayman Zahabi. I used to train with him for a long time. I used to be basically full-time training with him for about 6 months. Great dude. I wish him absolutely all the best. However, I almost felt bad watching the fight happen because I was rooting for Aldo to have a good retirement. And it's against somebody I've trained with for a very long time. So they should have given him somebody, in his old days. Even like a Jonathan Brookins that fought and isn't in the UFC right now. But even if you're wanting somebody in the UFC, anybody that isn't somebody that's about to go for the championship run type of thing.
Ever being against Ayman Zahabi, the UFC straight up character assassinated one of the greatest fighters of all time. They could have given 100%. Him Henry Cejudo, Corey Sandhagen, or Umar Nurmagomedov.
I mean, Sandhagen would have been bad as well, honestly. Umar, I think they should have given him a retirement fight, like a good fight with another leggy. Cejudo would have been good, a good leggy, a good older leggy.
But instead they just fed him to a bunch of guys that even hardcore fans don't find that much interest in. Speaking of Aldo, do you remember when the UFC was actually locked in with what the fans wanted and they made that badass promo video for him versus Conor McGregor? They actually spent the time and money to fly each guy to a set where they could film a legitimate trailer for what was genuinely a super fight. Now, obviously, I don't expect these bells and whistles to be pulled out for Bilal Muhammad versus JDM, but is it too much to ask that a fight promotion actually do some fight promotion? For the last 2 years, the extent of the UFC's promotional strategies are uploading some clips to YouTube, then the same old media day and pre-fight press conferences. There is no creativity, there's no passion, there's no pushing of the boundaries that used to be at least somewhat present with the company just a decade ago. It seriously feels like an AI program is doing the matchmaking these days, and seeing as most of the fights feel soulless and devoid of passion, I feel like I might be onto something, honestly.
I mean, I don't think that's the case. I just think it's literal laziness. I think it's laziness. I think they don't really care as much anymore because they're going to make money on gate anyway. They always fucking break their gate records. It's not because it's the best fucking fights in the world. It's just because it's a UFC event and people are locked in that that's UFC.
Honestly, it's as if they put together a poorly designed algorithm that matches up fighters without taking into account name value, stakes, fan demand, and even rankings. Sure, the upcoming main events are good, but the UFC always has a good flow of interesting main events. I really don't think that this is something that we should be applauding them for. The term is literally called main event. We have every right to expect a banger at the top of every single card, but the UFC matchmaking team has slowly diluted main card quality and thus our expectations for main card quality to the point where we get excited for a mediocre quality event with a solid headliner nowadays.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Both me and my brother, we love the UFC. But there's a lot of events we've started skipping. Or watching one fight of somebody that we know in there, or somebody that we used to train with, etc. There's a lot of events we've just started skipping watching. And it's because it's not fun anymore. It's not fun. If you go back to a lot of the Jon Jones events, or the Conor McGregor events, or Rumble Johnson, every time Rumble was, even Phil Davis, Rumble Johnson was a great fucking fight. I don't know if it was the main event or anything, but yeah, I remember Jimmy Manuel fights. I don't even remember his name, but I remember his fight. I remember he was so entertaining. There was so many entertaining fights back then, even though they were never really champions.
You want me to be totally honest, give me less events. Even if that means giving me 1 or 2 less pay-per-views a year, if that means that the UFC will stack cards better, then I'm all for it. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the UFC is actually producing too much content these days, and the quality of their product has suffered for it as a result. But of course, Dana wants to maintain his monopoly, market share on MMA, and as long as the UFC can outproduce their competitors, which they do already by a country mile, then that stifles any chance that another promotion can catch.
Don't worry, they'll just buy them all again, like Strikeforce and Pride, etc.
up to them. Do you remember when a UFC pay-per-view event used to be an event? Like a real honest-to-God event? Events where you would have 3 or 4 or 5 fights that were genuinely must-watch? Nowadays, if we get 1 title fight and 2 semi-interesting matchups, we're supposed to act grateful like peasants being thrown scraps from King Dana's dinner table. And I made a video about this recently, but it's no surprise that the cards lately have felt lazy and slapped together, seeing as Dana has clearly checked out from his job.
Well, he definitely has checked out from his job with his boxing and his power slap and whatever he's doing nowadays. He's kind of doing a little bit of everything, but holy shit.
Guy has missed over 70% of the press conferences in 2025. He's outsourced media duties to his human paperweight Dave Shaw. He has literally been fired from promoting Canelo versus Crawford for being lazy at TKO boxing as well. I know that there are fans out there that have always hated him, but when he was in his prime, Dana was the heartbeat of the company. He was front and center all the time, for better or worse. He orchestrated some big moves and big acquisitions, and when things got tough, he would stand in front of the cameras and face the music. But 2025, Dana just seems like a glorified middle manager who occasionally comes out of hiding to defend Jon Jones or go live on Instagram to announce like 5 fights. And the last topic that I want to bring up here is ESPN. I absolutely despise the ESPN deal, and I genuinely think that it's done much more damage than it has good for UFC fans. Let's start with the most obvious issue here, ESPN Plus. This stupid ass double paywall bullshit is highway robbery. We're not paying to get access to the pay-per-view. We are paying for permission to buy it. This is like going...
Seriously? Is that something new? Is that genuine? That's insane if that's true. It's like, hey, you have to buy the... Well, it's kind of like a license, honestly. Like a car license. Hey, you have to buy a license to be allowed to buy a car, to be allowed to buy gas.
Going to a restaurant and paying an entrance fee before you even sit down to order your food.
But you do that with a lot of bars and everything. So, of course, they take that from their ideologies. Oh, you have to pay 20 euros to get into the bar? And then you pay for the privilege to get into the bar for you to buy drinks. Sometimes you're paying for musicians and stuff. That's different. But just for the bar entry I'm talking about now.
Part about it is that ESPN Plus is genuinely unwatchable. The streams crash constantly, buffering happens throughout every single event, and God forbid if you try to rewind or fast forward during a live fight. The app is trash, the interface is trash, and yet we keep getting fleeced because there's no alternative. Meanwhile, Dana is off betting $25,000 at the blackjack table as the ESPN app turns into Windows 98 every fight night. The fact that this guy has the audacity to complain about people who pirate his streams, meanwhile he's asking us to pay 2 sets of purchases to watch pay-per-views is crazy. Hey, by the way, Dana, seeing as you hate pirates so much, how about you consider stripping that butt pirate Jon Jones of his belt?
That's savage. And Jon Jones is surely not a butt pirate, is he?
Not only that, the pacing for Fight Night events are absolutely garbage now. The free events drag on for 6 hours with constant commercial breaks and drawn-out desk segments designed to keep people watching till the next set of commercials. I myself actually pay for ESPN Plus, which is a purchase that I find myself questioning every single Saturday, but seriously, if I'm legitimately paying for this service, then why am I being made to watch so many ads? They've turned
That's another question. Why in the flying fuck would you be buying? Wait a minute. That's the same what's happening with Netflix in different places as well. So just guys, look out for that coming out in the coming time.
UFC broadcast into an ESPN advertisement. Every segment is brought to you by something. Every promo is an infomercial for DraftKings or Modelo or Toyo tires. And I understand that this puts a whole lot of money into the UFC's bank account, but I feel like it demonstrates a clear disdain for fans, and it's pretty disrespectful of our time. Remember how I said earlier that there are too many events these days? Well, this is ESPN's fault too. Before ESPN, the UFC calendar made sense, pay-per-views were more spaced out, fight nights served as a build-up for bigger cards, and the divisions had some breathing room. The UFC went from having 39 events in 2018 to averaging 42 events every year since 2019, which is when the broadcast deal started. Now, 3 more events a year might not sound like a lot, but let's just say that the UFC removed any 3 fight nights that have taken place this year completely. That's like, what, 30 extra chess pieces that they could use to make pay-per-views or other fight night events.
Yeah, but the problem is also if they have that many people and they have to feed them all because they have to contractually give them 3 fights, and you just have too many people on the roster. I'm not sure if they do, but if they do have that, then they need those extra events. And maybe for a little bit of extra money on the side, you know what I mean?
events more stacked. Given in 2015 and 2016, they held 41 events each year, but that was when the UFC had way more high-profile and interesting fighters to supplement that strength of schedule.
Fair
My
enough.
point is, the current UFC roster is spread way too thin with how frequently ESPN is making the UFC hold events. The UFC used to have a solid balance of quality versus quantity, but the fucking mouse turned the promotion into the McDonald's of MMA, and much like McDonald's, I'm addicted to the product, but that doesn't mean it's high quality. This content assembly line model has completely eroded the big fight feel that UFC.
Yeah, I remember when I used to come home from work and be excited to sit down with popcorn and soda, whatever the fuck we had at the time. We used to have iced tea a lot. Iced tea and popcorn, and we actually did buy McDonald's. We used to buy McDonald's for a lot of the events. We sit down and we'd be like, fuck yeah, we can, yeah! Even in 2000 and, must have been 12 or something, when I was living in Canada, we used to go to each other's places to watch the whole thing together, and it was a great time. Rory McDonald versus Rory McDonald and Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler was a great fight. Wow, it was great, and I saw it in a bar with a bunch of the people from the gyms. That was amazing. I don't feel that feeling anymore.
Pay-per-views used to have. When you're running 42 cards a year with the same 6 guys on rotation, nothing feels important anymore. They know that they can get away with giving us less for more because MMA fans like myself are addicted to the sport. We are going to watch no matter how many nothing burger fights that they serve us. We will debate rankings even though nobody fights often enough to justify the rankings, and they will keep charging $80 per pay-per-view as well as ESPN Plus subscriptions even as the event quality hits rock bottom. And yeah, that's basically...
Vote with your wallet. Don't fucking buy the UFC events then. That's the first thing you do. Stop buying the events and stop supporting it. If it's just because they will give you as low of a quality as they can. As low of a quality as they can. For as much of a price as they can. And if you keep buying it, problem.
Basically it. A part of me wanted to talk about how the fighters have become divas lately who make unreasonable demands and squat on their ranks when they don't get their way. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the fighters acting like man-children is a direct result of the UFC's lack of strong direction. Look man, I still love MMA, I'll still keep watching it because it's my favorite sport on earth, but if we're being totally honest here, the UFC is rotting from the inside out. This year, more than any other where I've been a fan, is when I really started to believe that the UFC is showing massive cracks. The business model is bloated, the matchmaking is a joke, and the UFC jumping into bed with ESPN has completely sterilized what used to be a sincere and authentic product. If things don't change, this version of the UFC is setting itself up for a massive fall. The TKO merger might have bought them some time, but the core product is crumbling.
But I think the TKO merger was probably a good idea. Because I think the people that wanted money to get out of there wanted to get out of there, and got money. So I think it was just more like a bye-bye.
Honestly, they deserve every bit of criticism that they've been getting lately, but if you want me to be honest, I am pretty confident that the UFC can get back on track, because it'll be pretty hard for them to let things keep getting worse, I'll just say that. Anyways, that is the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about the current state of the UFC. Do you think that the UFC can bounce back from where they are now?
I'm sure they can. They went from nothing to something. They can go from something to something greater again, It's not like the UFC suddenly is going to disappear overnight and go, oh my God, the UFC just went completely downhill and shit. It's not doing so well, but from not doing so well with billions of dollars and a full fight roster and barely having anything in UFC 1, sumo wrestlers and karate fighters and people lying about their resumes, I mean, this is a different time. But it was a good time then too. Man, that first UFC fight. Oh my God, the teeth flying. Oof.